All breakups have the aftermath of sadness and loss, but someone transitioning from victim to survivor, the fallout may include continued harassments or attacks. The resultant ongoing mental trauma and emotional stress can make a survivor question, was leaving really worth it? We are here to say yes. Yes, leaving is worth it. On today's show, Survivor, we are going to be discussing how to make that transition. Joining me is psychologist and agony aunt, Dr. Jane McCartney. Welcome, Jane, to the program.
Hello, LFA. Lovely to see you.
Yes. So why is moving on from abuse so difficult for someone?
I think one of the reasons is that people don't understand what a healthy relationship is. So,
Yes.
Therefore you're never going to, have a healthy breakup. Not that that is always a bit of a difficult thing. People
Yes,
breaking up.
yes.
But there's so much that goes in with that. Often there might be children involved, so there still has to be some kind of contact going on, or
Yes.
there's a house or finances, all sorts of things. Friends, in today's social media world, people's
Yes.
friends are often kind of then, hijacked social, on
No,
media.
it's true. It's
virtually
true.
hijacked.
Or sometimes you were in an abusive relationship, but that person still keeps in contact with your ex.
Yes, and it's easy to do. And self-esteem, if people have come out of a relationship where they don't know who they are, what they're meant to do.
Yes.
They walk around on eggshells all the time within the relationship.
Yes.
So their
self-esteem.
that sense of self-worth has been completely battered. So it's about, when you come out of a relationship, an abusive relationship or any relationship really, you've got to just take a bit of time. Yeah,
I agree.
and not necessarily analyze it or go through huge amounts of reflection, but just give yourself time.
It's a topic that really makes you think, and analyze, even situations that you've been in. And
and as you said, we all know people that have been in these
Yes.
relationships.
And sometimes we don't want to get involved.
Yes, that's another thing, but I think there's something about, even if it's the noticing somebody's response to that,
Yes.
and look, you might not want to do anything now, but know that there is help. That's as much as you can do. And you think, I'm going to lose a friend because if I mention this, but
Yes.
at some point that friend might come back to you and say,
It's
that thing
true.
you said 6 months ago, and I haven't spoken to you since.
Yes.
What's out there?
Plant a seed there. Okay, well, we will go further into today's topic. Let's get the facts and the chats from the streets of London.
What is domestic violence? Domestic violence, also called intimate partner violence, IPV, domestic abuse or relationship abuse, is a pattern of behaviours used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. Domestic violence does not discriminate. Anyone of any race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender can be a victim or perpetrator. It can happen to people that are married, living together, or who are just dating. It affects people of all socioeconomic backgrounds and education levels. Domestic violence includes behaviours that physically harm, arouse fear, prevent a partner from doing what they want to, or force them to behave in ways that they don't want to. It includes the use of physical and sexual violence, threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, and economic deprivation. So why doesn't she just leave? I would never let anyone hit me. Society's lack of understanding about the dynamics of domestic violence often is the greatest obstacle for the domestic violence survivor.
Well, I've never actually known anyone to judge anyone who's survived domestic violence. I mean, it's quite awful. So I think if you do, it's really bad. I mean, people tend to sympathise really with people who have gone through that kind of awful experience.
The person themselves doesn't particularly understand how how she's feeling or how hard it might be to leave the person that she's with. So because of that lack of understanding from, say, friends' point of view or relatives' point of view, like, people judge and say, well, it's so easy to leave someone, just leave him or just move on and you'll find someone better. But, like, in reality, it's most likely a lot more difficult than that.
But I think when you're involved, you feel like you love that person, you don't want to leave and you think they're going to change, but it's just so hard when you're involved in something like that. But I don't personally know anyone who has been in that situation, so it's hard for me.
The reality is that the most dangerous time for the survivor is when she leaves the abusive partner. 75% of domestic violence-related homicides occur upon separation, and there is a 75% increase of violence after separation for at least 2 years. According to the Domestic Violence Prevention Centre, most women will, on average, attempt to leave an abusive relationship between 5 and 7 times before they successfully do so. Safety plans should start from the assumption that the abuser is dangerous. Try to identify the circumstances under which the abuser typically becomes violent and how the abuser may react. How and when can you most safely leave? Where will you go? Are you comfortable calling the police if you need them? Who can you trust to tell that you're leaving? How will you travel safely to and from work or school to pick up the children? What community and legal resources will help you feel safer? Do you know the number of the local shelter? What custody and visitation provisions will keep you and your children safe? Is a restraining order a viable option? Open a savings account in your own name. Give the bank a safe address. Leave money, an extra set of keys, and copies of your important papers with someone you trust. You may need to leave home fast, and you'll need these things later. According to Women's Aid, when the abuse is finally over and you've arranged all the practical things like housing, money, schools for your children, and you feel reasonably sure that the abuser has stopped harassing you, you may be expecting to feel great, but that's unlikely to happen straight away. Once you're away from the abuse and it's safe to feel again, you may feel a sense of anticlimax. You are likely to experience grief, pain, and a deep sense of loss. Your trust will have been betrayed. Your self-esteem and confidence are shattered. In many ways, it's like being bereaved, and as with a bereavement, healing will take time.
It's probably very hard to do, but try to focus on things that are important to you and that you value in life. Stay close to family if your family helps you, friends, relatives. Just surround yourself with people who care about you and love you and who can give you that support that you haven't been receiving throughout the period of your abusive relationship.
The first thing, I think, it's not to look back and look for something better.
I would say it's probably an awful life experience to go through, but the only thing you can do is learn from it and start picking out, when you meet someone else, pick out the signs and know that if the signs start showing early, to avoid that person and don't be with them, basically.
I think if you've gone through that, you just need to keep going, keep your head up, and just remember that you are somebody, and you're not nothing.
So, Dr. Jane, what advice would you give someone who is healing from an abusive relationship?
Okay, so if they're out, they've managed to get out of the abusive relationship, then the best thing they can do, as I said before, is to give themselves time, surround themselves with people that are supportive, because research after research says that the more support you have, the better you will heal. Now, it doesn't need to be somebody constantly telling you what to do or, doing everything for you, but just know that there are people in your life that love and respect you and want to help you when you need the help. So that's kind of one of the things. If you're in the abusive relationship, it's really important to know that there's help out there.
Yeah.
Now, I dealt with somebody a little while ago that had to go to a local women's aid, and they were brilliant because they often offer a one-stop shop for people because they know it's difficult for women to get there.
Yes.
So what they want to do is they want to give you advice, legal advice, they want to give you housing advice, they want to give you benefits advice, and obviously they want to be able to support you, leaving that or doing something about that abusive relationship. So, and they also, offer psychological support and things.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that there is help out there, because often people think, but if I stay, I'll get him to change, and if I could just do the thing that he wanted me to do, you never will, because
you can't change another person.
No, and we need to sometimes not overly analyse the perpetrators, but we need to make a nod towards where they're coming from, understand the fragility of their concept of self. And how, but don't try and, you're not going to be able to change it, you're not going to be able to make it any better, but understand that, because then you perhaps won't follow into another abusive relationship, because that is often a sadness about people go from one abuse, they witness abuse in childhood, they go into their first abusive relationship, and then they go for a succession.
It's a pattern.
Yes, because they don't feel that they're worth anything better, and it's their skewed concept of what a relationship is.
Yeah, and then sometimes they have children.
Yes.
And then the children see this type of behaviour and they...
Yeah, and they follow the pattern. And that is often, very evident, within research of abusers, that they would have witnessed an abusive relationship of some description or another. And seen, say for instance, in an archetypal relationship, their father coming home drunk and abusing their mother, but then the mother stays with the father or doesn't seem to do anything about it. So it's not excusable in any way at all, but having that as your role model, it's not surprising that then lads can go on and perpetrate the abuse themselves.
Yes, I remember having a friend going through something similar, but she found faith. And that really helped her, to come out of the situation.
Yeah, there is support everywhere.
Everywhere.
And there's support sometimes when you don't actually even realise it. It's in the most unlikely places. I've had people that have said that they found their support with, a very kind of distant co-worker. I remember in one particular occasion that, somebody said, this person I said hello to in the morning, and that was, but this person, because they'd been there through the abuse themselves, they could recognise it.
Yes.
And when the time was right, and the person I was dealing with had to take a bit of time off, and this person actually was there for them. This co-worker was there for them.
Excellent.
And understood. So don't dismiss any. Just because somebody you don't know very well, they can be just as supportive and just as good for you.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, but stay tuned. Take a look at what's coming up next. We'll be joined by Lydia Amor in the studio.
Her uncle, basically,
was abusing her.
And I thought, what do I do with this? I have to go and talk to the teachers.
Welcome back on today's show, Survivor. We've been discussing the transition from victim to survivor. Joining us to discuss the topic further is business coach and motivational speaker, Lydia Amor. Welcome, Lydia, to the studio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And today's topic, survivor.
Beyonce. That's all I can think of.
We're all survivors.
Yeah, we're all survivors of some situation or another,
Yes.
Yeah.
So how much do you think abuse is a power struggle, and what happens when a person is given power over another?
Oh gosh, when a person is given power over another person, and if it's not managed in the right way, okay, because power can be a positive thing, right?
Okay,
and also it can be a negative thing, leaning towards the side of abuse, and that's when they can make somebody feel isolated, controlled, intimidated, have low self-esteem, lose sight of who they are as a person.
Yes.
I mean, the list goes on. Anything that's towards negative and darkness is when somebody is, really abusing the power they have over another person.
And it happens so much, especially in the workplace.
It happens a lot in the workplace.
And people
I've
can
seen
take
that happen.
power, can't they? You talk about giving power. People don't give power to somebody to be abused. And
No.
They take the opportunity and take the power.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen in the workplace, I've seen, when I go into offices and people have taken confidence in me and spoken to me and said, listen, people have wanted to go for, women or men, they've wanted to go for a promotion, but have felt that they've been intimidated by their boss or they've been ridiculed in such a way. So when they speak up, maybe in a meeting or it's part of the team, they're ousted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's psychological, emotional.
Yeah.
It's not actually something you can physically see.
Yeah.
So it
they
can be
get
quite
into
smart
hair.
in the mind.
And it can be
In the mind.
terrifying for people. When you get people that, you've had it, I know I have it, people are terrified about what's going to happen that day at work.
Become so anxious.
Yeah.
The mind can become so anxious. Anybody that has been on the receiving end of abuse, they will probably have a battlefield in their mind.
Yeah. But the one who's responsible, the giver, you think they are conscious of what they're doing?
I think sometimes they are actually.
I think they are.
They really are aware, and that maybe they're aware and they can't even stop it because it's gone beyond that point.
And they also get, it's a learned behaviour that actually I feel good about this because look, I'm in control of that person or this situation, and so
control.
Yeah,
control.
Totally.
I mean, I think it's an element where most people like to have an element of to be in control of something. Right? Do you relate?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what really are we in control of? We're in control of our minds. I think that's the only thing. You can never be in control. Well, you can be in control of another person, but ultimately, you can be in
as you say,
control of your
power.
mind.
When we give people that sort of authority, it's really dangerous because it can be negative as well as positive.
Of course.
It's how it's handled, how it's managed.
Yeah, there's a really famous psychological experiment, Stanley Milgram, back in the 60s, where he was very, very well known. He would sit people in front of a little control box and have somebody standing next to them saying, turn up the dial. And what happened? He had a stooge on the other side. Every time he turned up the dial, you were giving pain to somebody.
Okay.
And all the time, the power person was telling them to turn it up, even though they could hear the response of pain. It wasn't really pain, but they thought it was. They kept doing it, and that's an abuse. And that's what they were testing: how far somebody would go before they would say, "No, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore." And it was astonishing how far people would go. Because somebody was abusing their power.
Definitely.
So what can those in power do to ensure that they use it responsibly without abusing
That's
it?
a really good question. I feel that if, for example, the people that have power, normally they're in leadership type of roles, they're decision makers and so on, and nobody is beyond personal development, So you've got to say, listen, you're in a situation where you've got authority, or you're going to make decisions, you're going to say yes to a situation, no to a situation, but be fair in the way that you treat people, have equality in the way that you treat people, have compassion, all of those things.
Do they listen to that though? If somebody's kind of, on a bit of a power high, do they properly listen?
I think those that want to stay in their job should listen, but I don't think everybody does, because secretly it goes on in the workplace.
It's a matter of putting it into practice, because you can hear all of this, but if you don't do anything about the situation,
you would hope that you would be the type of person to know that, they say that, look at that person, the more you rise up, the sadder power has gone to their heads. Right? There's that saying. And so you always need people around you to keep you real, so you can have a reality check. Because if you're in a position where you can say no to this, yes to this, anytime you like, you could lose yourself. So you need people to keep you grounded.
Absolutely. There's many a celebrity, and history is littered. Henry VIII, all the way up to Elvis Presley, that are just surrounded by people that would not say no.
By people. And they're spoiling their character. So we pray that they have. I think you've got to have really good people around you.
I'm sure that there are people who are looking at this program today and probably going through some form of abuse right now.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, what advice, we can give to them, to help them. because sometimes they feel so low about themselves. It's like they don't need anyone to make them feel,
and lonely as well.
And lonely, yes.
Abusers will often cut
Isolate.
their, absolutely, they will isolate their, for lack of a better word, their victim.
Yeah.
So sometimes it probably might have been a person that had loads of friends. But then as the abuse, went on.
Reduce it down, isn't it?
Yes.
Don't talk to your
Reduce
sister.
down.
She always says terrible things about me.
So-and-so's not good for you. And getting into the mind.
Yeah.
It all starts with the mind. Doesn't it?
And we talk about relationships, but does that happen in a work situation as well?
Of course it happens. I've seen it happen in a work situation.
Every environment.
So they can't get isolated.
Of course, because with somebody at work, you can make them feel as though they're not part of the team, and what will they do? They go to lunch on their own, sit by themselves, and eventually, want to leave.
Especially if they're going through some form of abuse at home.
Of course.
And then they come to work, and then it's like no one notices, no one says anything.
You've just
no
said
one
something.
includes them.
You've just said something really amazing there. And when I say amazing, but you spot on that it could be happening at home. So quite often, anybody that's been abused in their lives, they will just mirror that behaviour wherever they go, because it's expected learned behaviour. They're expected to be abused, not unless they know any different, because their esteem will be so low.
Or it can be, when you've got the person behaving inappropriately in a power situation, it could be the polar opposite for them at home. They're the ones that are being ignored. Or
that's true. That's a very good point.
It's a very complicated issue.
Yes, it's very complex, especially when you're married.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Or in any
especially if you're in a relationship where you're married and your partner is abusing you.
Yeah.
Many people, and this includes men as well. Men go through,
oh my gosh,
abuse as well, and sometimes they suffer in silence, because
they do. To be perfectly honest, they always, to begin with, suffer in silence. I think most people do, because you think, oh no, this is a one-off and it'll change. But men, that kind of suffering will go on for much, much longer, because it's so emasculating, and it's something that just hits at the real core of that happening. And it's not something that's really, if we think about our popular media, the abuse, a man to woman abuse is something that is in, we hear it in the paper, it goes on all the time. But it's unusual when there's a report about a woman abusing a man.
It's really quiet.
It's a charity now. It's been set up. Mankind.
Or even if you had a child with special needs. And the child is very abusive to the parents.
Or it could even be the other way around. Child with disability and the parents could be abusive towards the child, just venting their frustrations, not knowing how to deal with the situation. I mean, there's so many different types of abuse, isn't there?
Yeah, but there's so many organizations that are equipped and available to support. Members in our society who are experiencing things like this.
But you just really need a lot of. It's great that we're talking about the topic.
You do, and I think the little tips that we heard earlier are absolutely invaluable. But you've got to have, and even if you can't, you don't think you can trust somebody in your life that's a friend or family or anything, because you think, oh no, my partner will find out or something. There are professionals that will help you, and often, and I have had this, I'm thinking about somebody that, she was going to be taken out of the country to get married, and she really didn't want to, and her GP was holding onto her passport for her. So there are professionals out there, and it might not be your GP that do it, but they can then put you in touch with the right. So an appointment with your GP should always be a one-to-one. And if there's a language barrier, because we'll often have that, a man will say, oh, but my wife doesn't speak English, so I have to come along and translate, or somebody has to come along and translate that will then feed the information back to her. There are professionals that are translators.
I'd often say
there are professional interpreters.
There's always going to be somebody around. I mean, can I share this story about when I was at school? When I was at school, at secondary school, there was this girl, and she was pretty quiet, and I just said to her, you don't seem to be being yourself today, what's up? And I spoke to her, and the teacher didn't seem to notice what was wrong. And I don't know, I was sensitive like that. I could just pick up on those things around me. And it turned out that she had, her uncle basically was abusing her. And I thought, what do I do with this? I have to go and talk to the teachers. And and I did. So I think the reason why I shared that is because there's somebody around that picks up on something, that will observe you. And like you said, it could be a stranger. And I think it's probably a good thing sometimes when it can be a stranger.
Somebody distant.
Yeah, because you'll open up and you won't feel you're being
it's
judged.
true.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break, ladies.
Yes.
So don't go away. We'll talk some more about this interesting topic and how we can help other women and men, children, everyone who's going through any form of abuse.
Yeah.
So stick with us and join us after the break. Next, we'll be hearing from the Director of Domestic Violence Training, Roxanne Agnew Davis, and author, founder, and director of Spectacular Women, Victoria Griffith, will be joining us here in the studio.
This man kneeling over me with one hand around my neck and the other hand punching me in my face and my stomach.
Welcome back on today's show, Survivor. We have been discussing abuses in power. Our team met with the Director of Domestic Violence Training, Roxanne Agnew Davies. Let's hear what she had to say.
I worked as a clinical psychologist in the NHS for about 15 years. And then in 2000, I took a job at Refuge, which you will probably know is a charity for women and children escaping domestic violence. And in that year, I managed 6 refuges, and then for a few months after that, I managed the National Domestic Violence Helpline. And after that, I started my proper job as Head of Psychological Services for Women. And in the next 2 to 3 years, I talked with a couple of members of staff with over 500 women. And as I started to hear their stories, as I learned about their experiences, and I also learned about their resourcefulness, determination, courage, and qualities, I was inspired by each woman's stories, and 17 years later, I still am. Domestic Violence Training Limited really formed to fill a gap between mental health services and domestic violence services. In 2000, between 2000 and 2005, we realised that many women in refuges were suffering from psychological distress, and many women who were approaching doctors or in mental health services were there because they'd experienced abuse, and yet doctors and nurses weren't identifying or talking to them about abuse, and domestic violence workers, although they knew women were upset, didn't know what to do with that. So my company, Domestic Violence Training Limited, is really designed to support domestic violence workers to understand and support women with psychological distress, and to help health workers offer a better response. So if we think about physical violence, then it causes acute injury. If we think about sexual violence, it causes other sorts of physical injury, including miscarriages, gynecological problems. And if we talk about psychological violence, or the Americans call it intimate terrorism, then we have a better understanding why victims who are effectively held hostage or prisoners at home will have a reaction that causes psychological problems. Many women say to me, the bruises heal, Roxanne. It's the mind games or the way that I feel inside that's so hard to get over. So we know from the research and from women themselves that they will talk about loss of self-esteem or confidence. But from the research, we also know that women experience post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, and often will drink to try and numb the pain. When we think about women's journey from victim to survivor, or indeed thriver, sometimes they're treated very differently than victims of other crime. For example, let's suppose I phone the police. I think that they would do something about the burglar and arrest them. And yet in domestic violence, there's often a focus, and the abuser or the perpetrators remain invisible. So the first part of the journey is not just up to her, but up to us as a society to make sure that women and children are safe at home. I believe that every woman and child has the right to live without fear. So the first step in the journey for her may be to call the police or to call the National Domestic Violence Helpline.
From one inspiring lady to another, joining us in the studio to tell her personal journey is mother empowerment specialist, mindset coach, author, consultant, inspirational speaker, survivor of domestic violence, school governor, and founder and CEO of Spectacular Women, Victoria Griffin. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
We are indeed grateful to have you here today because your story is going to help so many that are looking at this program today. So tell us your story of how you overcame this situation in your life.
Well, you know, I think as a teenager, I experienced domestic violence, and I remember being in that relationship for a number of years. I was there for 9 years, and there's one particular day that really sticks out in my mind, and that was the day that I left. And I remember lying on the kitchen floor with this man kneeling over me with one hand around my neck and the other hand punching me in my face and my stomach.
Oh, wow. How old were you?
I was 24 at the time because it was a 9-year relationship. So I was in there for 9 years. And so it got to a point where I was struggling to get away, and I finally did. And, you know, I lived on the 5th floor of, you know, a council flat. And I remember literally running to the front door and, you know, literally to try and get away. And I remember when I got out the front door, I could hear my daughter, and she was only 5 at the time, and she was literally screaming on the top of her voice. But I had to run. You know, I had to get away. And I remember jumping down 4 and 5 stairs at a time. If you can imagine how fear can really take you and you really just need to get away. And so that was me, you know. And I remember when I got to the ground floor, I was literally thinking, what in God's name had I done to deserve this? And so it was only years later that I realized that that was just a setback in my life to actually make me the person that I am today. And that became my reason why I do a lot of the work that I do now in terms of helping women to heal their heart after domestic violence.
So when people, I think you asked yourself a hugely significant question, what have I done to deserve this? What's the answer to that?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Nothing. You are, totally. And I think people need to help. Nobody deserves. There's nothing at all in any relationship that justifies any violence at all.
You know, I left home quite young, and you know, and I shacked up with the boyfriend, and I think that was the way that I felt. I couldn't go back home. I remember the first day that, you know, he hit me. I did leave, but then I went back because I felt like I had nowhere to go. So it was, you know, I felt like I was in a catch-2 situation whereby, you know, you've got somebody there that's offering, you know, to take you in and showing you all the love and attention and so forth. But on the flip side of that, you know, you were having all the emotional, physical and psychological abuse. And so...
And you don't know whether...
It was about, And it's,
as you say, the first time, undoubtedly there was, sorry, I'll never do it again. And,
absolutely.
oh look, I've done it again. But you came back the first time, so, I think
there was a cycle.
Absolutely.
And it only takes one thing to make a cycle.
And I think this is the issue as well with the cycle of abuse, is that women tend to, and I say women because I work with a lot of women and I work with the young girls, but I also know men experience DV. But when it comes to women experiencing DV and going through that cycle, not only do they lose a part of themselves, but they actually ignore their intuition. And when you ignore your intuition, once you ignore it once, you ignore it again and again and again, and then before you know it, you're in so deep. You know, and it's just unfortunate that some women, you know, I mean, I think in every week there's 2 women killed by, you know, in relation to DV each week. That's quite sad when you think about that.
You know, sometimes I wonder, you know, when something affects your esteem so early on, it's not like what did you do to deserve it, because you didn't do anything to deserve that situation. But if something happens with your esteem and then if it's levelled here, you accept something here. Does that make sense? And that
absolutely
interacts with the intuition as well.
Yeah, I think
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that. I mean, me leaving home, there was issues with my schooling. You know, there was lots of issues.
Lots of things happening.
Yeah, there was lots of things that I experienced within school, and so you know, it was challenging there. It was challenging at home.
Exactly.
I became very rebellious, and I just wanted to go. So,
and your abuser was able to capitalise on that.
Yeah, this is the thing.
From a really young age. Yeah.
Because he was also probably aware of everything that you were going through at home.
Absolutely, yes.
Gosh, it's so interesting to know what his background is, because people learn their behaviour from somewhere.
Definitely.
So why do you believe a woman's confidence is so affected and shaken by experiencing abuse?
My personal experience is that you lose a part of yourself, and when you lose a part of yourself, you lose all, you know, that sparkle that you have as a young individual or as an adult. If you know, if you're somebody that's quite happy and jolly, and then you know you stumble into a relationship such as an abusive relationship, then that can take a toll on you, and it can knock your confidence. But I also do believe that when individuals do go into abusive relationship, there are some underlying issues with themselves that attract that type of abuse.
And also, you've got to remember, from the abuser's point of view, they are looking for vulnerabilities and
they know how to find it.
Totally.
They know what they're looking for.
It's like, you need me.
You need
nothing without me.
No one's going to love you as much as me, Hannah.
And equally, I need you, and you're put in the role of being their rescuer. Sort me out. I can't. My life. It's you and I against the world.
That triangle. That's that.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what are the steps to overcoming abuse and healing? Wow. What would you say, Victoria?
Okay, for me, I believe you've got to go back in order before you can go forward. And that's part of the work that I do in my program, where I help women to heal their heart. And so going back enables women to deal with those frozen emotions, I call them, those emotions that they have suppressed, things like buried hurt, past hurts and things like that. And so once they're able to tap into that and deal with it, and for some women it can be painful. It was painful for me, but I think it's necessary in terms of somebody being able to heal. And there's another term that I call spiritual constipation. It's not my term, but it's, you know, in terms of women being able to kind of be able to move past those limitations that hold them back. And so when an individual is not able to release any of the pain, any of the hurt, it stays stuck, doesn't it? It's like if you're constipated,
and it
you
stays
know,
internal.
There you go. And so this can affect so many individuals in so many ways. It can affect them in their health, financial, going into a new relationship, their business, career. You know, it's such a big issue in terms of, you know, women understanding this. And this is the reason why I do this work. I do this work because I know when I left that relationship, these were some of the challenges that I experienced. And so the fact that I was able to overcome it and deal with those issues, hence the reason I now run my own business. I became a lecturer. I do
so you
so
have
many.
transitioned. You have transitioned from victim to survivor.
And this is what I want for other women. This is what I want for other women, because it's possible. And I think sometimes when you're in that situation, you don't see it as possible. You think, this is it, and this is all my life can be.
Did you ever make a plan? When you were going through the abuse, did you ever make like a plan? I'm going to get out of here today. And when I leave here, I'm going to go to this place. Did you ever like...
Funnily enough, I didn't. But I had a dream. Because it got to a point where I spent a lot of time by myself. And I started praying. And I mean, I was brought up as a Catholic, I was taught to pray, but when I was in that relationship, all of those things went out of the window for me. And so when things got so bad, I started praying again. And I remember having this dream of being in a new flat or a new house, and it was white. The whole walls were white and cream. The flat that I was in initially was black, red and white wallpaper. So it was very
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Type of it.
And it was so funny. It was so ironic that it was just like months later I was offered a property, and it was on the third floor, the fifth floor that I was telling you about initially.
Yeah. So it's like doors were like open for you now.
Yeah. But I remember, you know, thinking when I went to view that flat, I remember thinking, right, he can't get in the window. In this flat, because the previous place he could come in the window if I said I didn't want him back and stuff. Like he would climb through the window and things like that. And so I remember being in that new flat thinking he can't get into this one, and so
feeling safe.
And so
safe. It's amazing. Who, you know, when you did that, you got your place. Who did you then turn to get your help?
It was actually ironic because, you know, being out of the education system for so long as well, I finally plucked up the courage to go back to school.
Oh wow!
And you know, we're talking about a decade, and it was scary. It was very scary. And you know, I remember being in college, and there was a teacher that took a liking to me, and this teacher became my mentor, my coach, everything that I could have ever wanted. And I remember she was the first person that I told about what I had experienced, and I broke down and I cried, and she bought me books, she bought me videotapes, not videotapes, like the cassette players, inspirational, inspirational books and so forth. Amazing. And I remember she was the first person that planted that seed of you know, that there's so much more to you, Victoria. You know, the possibilities of what you could be. She talked to me about living on purpose, and I've never heard those things before. And so that...
So now you can tell your story exactly more, you know, and help so many others.
Absolutely.
You've been truly inspiring.
Thank you.
I am so grateful to have you in the studio, and I'm sure you will help a lot of people.
That's my
So thank you once again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So we're going to take a short break, but don't go away. We'll be back with more on our Survivor episode. Here's a sneak peek of what's coming up after the break. Next, see and hear from singer-songwriter Echoes.
I think it's about surrounding yourself with positive people that will tell you the truth, not what you want to hear.
Welcome back. Today's topic, Survivor. Our team met with singer-songwriter Echoes to find out how she survived the music industry.
What inspired the Human song? Actually, Maya Angelou is one of my biggest heroines. I think she stood for just equality and just humanity and kindness that I thought last year the world's been a bit of a scary place, and we needed a bit of a reminder about all the good things that she stood for. So I went into the studio with my producer Dee Adam, and we sat down and we just kind of write a song that was kind of uplifting and powerful, but it's just reminding people that there's so much good to be done in the world. I think Maya Angelou really exemplifies that. I'd say the greatest obstacles I've overcome would probably be myself. It would be learning that you can't be everything to everyone, that you can't please everyone. It's that desire, I think maybe especially as a woman, to be liked and to be pretty all the time and not to do anything wrong. So I think unlearning some of that in order to create art that's real and authentic and comes from within you, that's probably the biggest obstacle I faced. Okay, after a setback, bouncing back is tough. I think it's really important to allow yourself to be disappointed, to be sad, to kind of sit with that for a moment and say, okay, then tomorrow I'm going to dust myself off. I'm going to get up and just maybe see what went wrong, There's some things that are in your control to change, some things are not, and then build on it. Everything can teach you a lesson if you let it and if you look for it. So I think it's about surrounding yourself with positive people that'll tell you the truth, not what you want to hear, and kind of reminding yourself why you're doing it and keep going forward. Probably right up there, the toughest things to survive would be rejection in the music industry. Again, that's another thing about knowing that not everyone will like your music, and that's fine. Like, there's great music out there that I don't particularly like, and there's some things I like some people think is rubbish, so it's all about knowing that everything's subjective. Kind of getting started and finding your voice, I think is quite hard, because you really have to dig deep as to who you are and who you want everyone to see, putting yourself out there for criticism and rejection, but also for connection. So I don't think you can have one without the other. I want to say the sky's the limit, but I want to perform for and share my music with as many people as possible. And kind of what I live for is that connection when you're playing live or when you're on the radio or something, and someone will come up to you and say, oh, thank you for that moment, or thank you, that reminded me of this time, or oh, I just had a great time, or just that giving to people something that comes from within you it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, I just want to do that as much as possible around the world.
So ladies, do you think we have what it takes to survive?
I think, yeah,
definitely.
We all do.
We definitely do.
Yeah, we all have to be able to survive no matter what it is.
Yes, no matter what we go through,
you have
no matter what storms.
It can get lost sometimes.
You can. There's a lot of strength. You know, when you shared your story earlier on, and you said that what happened one day, you just got up and you got up from the kitchen floor, you got out. We've all got that fire. That lion, whatever you want to call it, in us that says enough is enough.
Absolutely.
And someone says something just switched in me, and that power just came, and I got myself out of there. I think everybody's got that in them. And the next stage is hoping that, like you did, you found a mentor, somebody that believed. Once you carried on with that, you found somebody in school who believed in you. And I think I've had somebody believe in me in my life before. That was my mum. I've had different people, special people that I would never have dreamed of speaking into my life and turn me around. And they say that sometimes we don't get to see what we're made of until somebody else can look inside of us, and then you really believe that seed that was planted, and look at where you are today.
Absolutely.
Look where we all are today.
I like when you said about, with the workshops, in terms of going to your roots to see, what is hidden there. What are some of those traumas that you went through? Deal with the past,
to move forward.
Because that hinders us sometimes.
It does.
Absolutely.
It's just the recognition of that. Be something you might not be able to be in a place where you can deal with it or analyse it, but just recognising there's something there is just another step
forward.
I love that. Just another step. That's what it's got to be. Just not big, huge steps.
Absolutely. Gradual baby steps, isn't it?
You don't change. You don't change your life completely from one moment to the next.
It's a process.
Unless it's exceptional.
It's a process, and I think healing is something that is a lifestyle. It's something that you continue. You don't do a workshop today and feel like you're fixed. Hence the reason the work that I do, I make sure that it's something, and it's a system and it's a process that women can continue throughout life, because you will have those, those little drawbacks or those things that, the triggers,
it's called
that kind of pull you back, but it's what you do to get yourself out.
Absolutely. And as you were saying, when you reach to that point where you say, enough is enough. I had enough of this situation. When you're like totally revolted, and things has to change. It has to.
This fire just comes from somewhere, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
It just comes from somewhere. And you think, did I have that inside of me? Wow. Isn't it?
But there's hope for survivors of domestic violence.
Absolutely.
Think of growing from a place of victimization to survival, and ultimately to thriving. While a person has no choice about being victimized, we don't have to become a victim. Be committed to the future. Take care of your health. Invest in your career, relationships, and life. Believe that eventually you will feel empowered again. You've heard our thoughts, so tell us your thoughts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or by emailing us on comments@dkw.me. Join us next week for another exciting, inspiring, informative episode of DKW. Until then, it's goodbye.
You know.